Good morning. Welcome to Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for November 13th, 2018. Madam Clerk, I believe we have a closed session.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Calaveras versus Pacific Gas and Electric Company et al., San Francisco County Superior Court case number CGC 1856445.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll go to closed session. Good morning. Welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for November 13th, 2018. Please rise if you can for the pledge. Supervisor Calaveras, can you please lead us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can you please read out from our closed session?
On a motion by Supervisor Garamendi and a second by Supervisor Clapp, the board voted unanimously to accept the mediator's proposal of $25.4 million and directs council to finalize the settlement agreement consistent with the mediator's proposal for the chair to execute. Once it is fully executed, it will be made available. The board also directed the auditor to create a designated fund account to accept the settlement funds. A press release will be issued before the end of today. And then my apologies, I did not read the title of the closed session, which was pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Calaveras versus Pacific Gas and Electric Company et al., San Francisco County Superior Court case number CGC 1856445.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to on the agenda to the announcements.
This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Any board member have an announcement? Supervisor Garamendi.
Just want to, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure we're going to do this in a minute, but I just want to convey to our colleagues in Butte County, our hearts are going out to them at this time. If the public or any of us have ways that we like to contribute, we should try to help them out. One of our colleagues, Supervisor Teeter, lost his home. He represents that in Paradise. He serves on RCRC with me and on the Sierra Nevada Conservancy Board. So he's very familiar with our county, but just really want to emphasize the support, especially since we understand in our county what this is going to mean, not just for today and yesterday, but what this will mean for years ahead for them.
And with that being said, can we take a moment of silence for the 44 victims in Butte County on this camp fire? So a moment of silence, please. Okay, moving on. Any staff announcements? Michelle, OES.
Good morning, Supervisors. Michelle Patterson, OES Director for Calaveras County, and just echoing what Supervisor Garamendi said, it's been a challenging weekend, I think, for all of us in the emergency management community. I was in touch with Butte County and with my colleagues throughout the Northern California region over the weekend and trying to help them out as best I could with our resources here. I just wanted to make one particular comment. I've had a lot of questions come to me about, how can we help Butte County. And I think one of the things that we can best do is to respond to the specific needs that they request. I do know that they've been getting a ton of support from all over the state in the form of donations, both monetary and otherwise. So if there's any questions about donations and how to direct support, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can help best direct those type of that type of support for our county. So that's it. Thank you.
It looks like you were on the phone a lot.
Yes, my phone finger is now damaged. My texting finger is gone. So yeah, thank you.
Any other staff announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments.
Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
All right, public comments. Are there any public comments this morning?
I don't see anybody. Do I get the whole half hour? No? Okay, fine. Marty Crane, Valley Springs. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to the Robin Glanville of our elections department and the director and staff at the Avalon Care Center. You may have noticed in the Valley Springs News that our seniors are not to be left out. They don't want anybody to think that they're out to pasture, which sometimes people think that, out of sight, out of mind. There is truth and value in older and wiser, and they want us to know that. So we all work together, and we started this year making sure that they get their ballots and that they have a way to cast those ballots. Sometimes they're just taken away in an ambulance, and suddenly they find themselves recuperating for a month or two, and their absentee ballot is laying on the kitchen table, or they don't have a way to get to the polls. So this year we got a late start, but we're going to be starting on it earlier next year, and they made the front page of the paper above the fold, I might say. I also want to say that thank you, Supervisor Garamendi, for bringing up the campfire. It's huge. We tend to hear about the big fires. We could have 200 fires going at the same time, and we don't hear about it because our firemen and our law enforcement and public works, they all work as a team to take care of all of this to keep us safe on a daily basis, but we don't hear about them until they're big, like the Butte fire, which we were totally not prepared for. And there are many communities that are not prepared in advance to be able to move on a dime. So Red Cross is there within an hour. As soon as they get the call from the county, they're there. And that takes some advanced planning. And so I want to encourage everyone to, Michelle was saying how you can help. If you can, I think there's two ways you can help. You can write a check so that when Red Cross or your other favorite charity that is part of a organized team in emergencies can just take care of what they need in a moment. You can do that, so you can make a donation, but you can also go online to redcross.org and sign up for the orientation so that when we need to be prepared to step up, you're prepared to step up as a local volunteer and help. Because you can imagine how difficult it is to manage 100 or yet 1,000 volunteers all of a sudden. So we all need to do our part. Before the sun sets, you've heard me say this before, get a go bag so that we're not having to rescue
Thank you, Marty.
I just want to give you these as well.
Any other public comments? Seeing no other public comments?
Al County Taxpayer Association. One way that we might be able to help the county that suffered such a tremendous loss is to inquire if they have emergency coordinator in the county. If they don't, maybe we can loan them ours. That could be helpful. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Good morning, Board. Since you're all here, I thought I'd finish my tale of the gold mine on Double Springs. I kind of left off where 12 miners died in the mine, drowned after hitting a underground lake. That day, walking out of the mine, old man McCarty decided he's closing the mine. It was the end of the road for the mine on Double Springs. They never recovered the bodies. Their bones are still floating under Double Springs somewhere. And old man McCarty kind of lost heart. So he decided he wanted to do something with his property since he didn't like any of his relatives. He went across the street to the two old men that had been his neighbors for the past 50 years and told them, I want to give you the mine. I want to give you the property. I'm setting it up with a lawyer. A couple years later, he went to them. He says, it's all set up. Mr. Parrish, Mr. White, the property's yours. You go down and sign the papers. And those two old gentlemen said, well, it makes me feel kind of funny. Why don't we wait a while? Let's just talk about it a while before we make a decision. Old man McCarty died the next day. Guess where the property went? To the relatives he didn't like. That property on Double Springs, it's called Spring Valley. And used to be full of mine tailings, big clumps of rocks. And in the 60s, somebody went through and graded it and made it all pretty flat. But it ain't worth even grazing on, because it's all tailings from mines. It's all gritty, and it doesn't grow grass. So Double Springs has quite a history of death. In the old days, it used to be lived on by Indians, and the Indians were run out by the white man who slaughtered them, took over, took the land as their own. Used to be a meeting ground for tribes to come in the spring and confer with each other. Now the land has been bought by McCarty's heirs, the Galleys, and it's owned by Glenn and Keiko Nakagawa. They run cattle, small little Japanese cattle, Wagyu cattle on it right now. Check it out someday.
Thank you. Any other public comments this morning? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. We'll go on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Any board member wish to pull an item? No? Any staff member? No? Any member of the public? Seeing none? Excuse me? Number 8. Okay. I'll bring it back to the board. I'm looking for a motion for the remainder of the consent.
So moved.
A motion by Supervisor Clapp,
Second.
second by Supervisor Mills. Any further discussion? If not, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Bonnie, can you come forward?
Do you have to read it first?
Yes, she asked me, but you can come forward.
Okay, sorry.
Item 8 is from Health and Human Services Agency to authorize the Auditor Controller to release by warrant to the Resource Connection of Amador and Calaveras Counties Incorporated, Presley Funds and Domestic Violence Education and Training Fund Probation and Court Collections collected July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2018, supporting the Domestic Violence Shelter-based program in Calaveras County in the amount of $9,957.57.
Bonnie,
Yes.
you have questions?
It's more a comment about this agenda item. These monies are collected through marriage licenses. Marriage licenses in Calaveras County cost $70 every time you decide you want to get married. $23 of that money goes to the domestic violence program. When this money first became available, the total amount in 1 year was like $113. There weren't very many marriage licenses issued back then. But it looks like there's plenty of them right now. I always thought the way to really make some money is start putting a tax on divorces. Maybe we'd have twice as many funds generated through divorce money. But anyway, I just want to say that I'm not sure what this money is being used for. In the old days, it was used to pay rent and a hotline. But I know no matter how much money they are able to get through grants or funds like this, there's never enough to supply the need for the domestic violence issues that occur throughout our society. Anyway, it wasn't a question, it's just to raise the issue that marriage license fees are supporting a domestic violence program. Thank you.
Any other comments on this issue? If not, we'll bring it back to the board, look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Mills, do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Garamendi. Any further discussion? If not, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to the regular agenda. Item number 16.
Item 16 is from the Office of Emergency Services to receive an update on disaster recovery activity throughout Calaveras County for Butte Fire 2015, tree mortality 2015, and winter storms 2017.
Good morning again, Board and Mr. Letts and County Council and Diane. I'm pleased to be sharing the stage this morning with our Director of Public Works, Josh Pack, and I don't see Matt, but he'll be here shortly, I assume. So we have a new shared format for our disaster recovery presentations, and it'll be the same, similar looking, but we've basically divided the presentation into roads and trees. So Josh will be helping out with the roads part of the presentation, and I, along with Tad Mason from TSS Consultants, will do the trees portion of the presentation. And with that, looks like Josh doesn't know my password, so I gotta hook it up here. Thank you. It was just warming up for the morning. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to discuss roads first. Here.
All right. Morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is Joshua Pack. I'm your Director of Public Works and Transportation. Matt Boyer is our project manager on the project. He should be here any minute. He'll be able to provide additional information on each of these projects specifically. However, This is my opportunity to present to the board and to the public our approach at handling these disaster emergency projects. In particular, with the FEMA projects, or actually FHWA's first, we have two separate approaches. The first one is the FEMA projects, which have been a combination of the Butte Fire and the 2017 winter storms. The first approach of that, which I'm happy to inform you, is we are currently out for each of the 5 FEMA projects, out for to select a consultant for those. That was put out on the streets last week. Matt Boyer has been selected to be the project manager and our liaisons to act as an extension of staff for the delivery of those 5 projects. The selection process, that will continue through the middle to early next week. We'll be closing those bids, or closing those proposals, reviewing those, and having each of those 5 projects a team of consultants set to expedite and deliver those projects for your approval at the last meeting in December. Based on that, we plan to expedite the delivery of those projects and hopefully in construction by summer of this upcoming year. The construction of that will also come to you. So that's the 5 projects in particular that are funded through FEMA. We have a separate approach for the projects that are funded through Federal Highways Administration and Caltrans. Those series of projects were also out in the process of doing a request for qualifications to select consultant teams to deliver those projects as well, realizing that our kind of small staff and our limited breadth and depth of scope necessitates the need to reach outside and provide services to deliver those. So the goal on those is to deliver each of these. Again, those consultant contracts will be to you probably in January of this upcoming year. And from there, we hope to deliver those projects again this summer. The goal of mine and the goal of our department is to move forward to get these projects out, completed. The hope is to deliver as many of these as quickly as possible, with the vast majority, if not all of these, being delivered by this upcoming summer. Appreciating that we do have some limitations in the winter, with hopefully the rain is going to come at some point that limits our ability to do that. So speaking more specifically, I'm going to hold off on my specific comments on project specific. I'll see if, hopefully if Matt shows up, he'll have more information on each of those. I'll be able to answer 50,000 foot level with that. And then if any specific questions I can't answer today on these particular projects, I'd be happy to get that information and bring it back to you as quickly as possible.
Do you want to talk about the disaster website?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So one additional thing we're doing is with the handoff, and I don't think this has been shared entirely, these projects have been kind of in limbo. And so with my arrival here, with my experience in delivering emergency projects, my time in Nevada County, we delivered approximately $1.7 million in both FEMA and FHWA projects, approximately 40 to 50 of them. Delivered all of those within 6 to 9 months after they occurred. I have experience in delivering these projects in an expedited manner. So there seemed to make sense to have the projects that were currently under Michelle's shop to come under mine. Like I said, I've already implemented this pretty quickly within the last 3 or 4 weeks. My team and I have put the framework together to deliver these projects. One of the things that's most important is part of transparency and accountability to the public is to have a website or a location where residents can go and more frequently get updates. It's one of the biggest complaints we've heard, and appropriately so, that even if we're working on these, the public is not getting those updates in a timely manner. So later this week, as part of this update, actually Matt will be working with our staff to provide updates for these projects. We'll be implementing on the website this week, and then from there, looking to provide more timely updates. So when residents, when they call you or they call us, we can direct them to the website instead of having updates, less frequently, having those more frequently and more up to date, so they can get updates within a week or two of when actual events are happening. So, like I said, that'll happen later this week, and when that happens, I'll inform each of you via email, so you can inform your constituents and residents of what's going on, and that this website's updated. We're also looking to reach out in more 21st century manners, things through Facebook. Nextdoor is a wonderful resource, and working with Michelle and her existing list as well to reach out to residents who are engaged in this topic.
Okay. I guess I'll pause right here, and if there's any questions specific to any of the roads projects from the board, we can address those. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to disaster recovery as it pertains to trees. So for the Butte Fire, we still do have project worksheet 78 to complete, and this was the green tree project that is currently pending. On the 24th of October, OES County Administration met with representatives from FEMA and their some of their consultants, as well as our local tribe, to sort of discuss the output of the archaeological treatment plan that was utilized for phase 1 of the trees, and how that then relates to phase 2 of the tree project, and where we go from there. So once that treatment plan has gone through all of its approval levels, and all of the environmental clearances have been retained for the tree project, we will be getting approval for that. The soonest that project will commence is January. As on behalf of the county, I concurred with all of the requirements that were laid out by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and others to conduct this project during the wet season. So as soon as it completes its go around with the environmental clearances and all of the rest of the historical and archaeological clearances for those trees, that project will commence. And then we still have PW 99, which is the insurance recovery piece. We need to have these trees reviewed again to make sure that there are no existing or remaining insurance recovery issues with these trees. With that, I would love to bring Tad Mason up with TSS to talk about our tree mortality projects.
Good morning. So just a quick update. Through October, we've addressed 1,130 trees. Most of those trees were removed. Some, at the request of the property owners, were left on site. Looking forward to projects underway right now. We've got 5 active projects, mostly up Highway 4. And going through the list right here, you can see Project 3A is a big trees. This is a smaller project. It's just 28 trees. We had a request from tree service companies that we vary the size of the project so smaller tree service companies can actually bid on these projects. So in light of that, 3A is fairly small. ACE's Tree Service was the successful contractor based out of Sonora, and they should be done later on this month. Project 4, we've got 377 trees targeted. Joe's Logging was a subcontractor to Nate's Tree Service out of Sonora, and that project should be done by November 15th. That's also up in big trees. 4A, currently underway. It's a large project, 764 trees, awarded to Danvers Construction. We're looking at a late December completion date. 4B is currently being pulled together as a project. We're planning to have the ROEs mailed out here this month, and depending on response, have that project underway early next year. Next slide. Okay. Project 5, 340 trees. This project was recently awarded to Danvers Construction, and we're looking at commencing operations here later on this week. This is the Blue Lake Springs, Lakemont, Meadowmont area. Project 6, 7, and 8, looking at West Point, Avery, Murphys, Wilseyville. The ROE return rate is just over 50%. We're going to go ahead and pull the trigger and launch those projects here soon, and plan to have them completed by late December, early January, depending on winter weather. Project 7A is another smaller project. This was pulled together as a imminent hazard tree project due to some input from residents along Skunk Ranch Road that was concerned about the need for immediate removal. So that project is currently wrapping up. It was awarded to Danvers Construction. Project 9, this is BLM managed property near West Point. A little bit of frustrating project here. We've submitted all of the maps and tree lists to BLM, and we're currently awaiting a response. We know BLM is spread a little thin right now with wildfire conditions to the north, and we continue to press them for a response. So, of course, this being federal lands, we have to deal with NEPA as well as an archaeological survey. So that project will take a while, unfortunately. Good news on other federal land that we're working with, U.S. Forest Service, the Stanislaus National Forest. They're no stranger to tree mortality issues, and they've been great to work with. Project 10 is coming together. We have it out for bid, expecting a response by November 19th. And this is a fairly large project, almost 400 trees. I'll show you a map here in a minute. Projects 11, 12, 13, and 14 are additional Forest Service projects that we will launch once we have 10 underway. The reason for really implementing 10 first is proof of concept to understand how it is to work with Forest Service on this. And from that, then we can build projects 11 through 15 based on lessons learned from 10. 16 through 22 is basically the balance of the county outside of the Butte Fire footprint. And then lastly, Project 22 will be the additional BLM properties throughout the county, which we will start once we have Project 9 underway and can learn from that experience. We'll build Project 22. This is Project 10 in the blue on the map here. Almost 400 trees, all Forest Service. And we hope to start that immediately upon receiving a winning bid on the 19th. Next. We have two challenges facing us. One is winter weather that is approaching. We're already experiencing some trees failing in the high winds. And we just need to be very diligent working with our crews because safety first, of course, in these kind of conditions. So on days when we have high winds, of course, the crews will not be working because of issues with tree failures. We know of 19 instances of tree failure so far, all of those impacting infrastructure, so we're very aware of trees failing. Last challenge, and this is more immediate, is with the situation up to the north. We're seeing tree crews being pulled in that direction, and many of them are under contract with PG&E. So we're finding it a little more challenging to get tree service crews out there because they're spread kind of thin. But with our contracting process, there's a very structured performance period with each contract, and we're planning to stick with that. Those performance periods range from 15 days to 45 days. So we're holding the tree service companies' feet to the fire, but just be aware, tree service companies are at a premium right now for a variety of conditions to the north. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor
Thank
Albert.
you for coming in. Good information, good briefing. Just a quick note. How many of our local tree services bid on these projects? And how many were awarded to local contractors?
Right, Supervisor. You're, as far as defining local, you're saying within the county?
Within the county.
0.
0 bid on it?
Primarily, we're getting bids out. Danvers Construction, for example, they're based out of Clovis. Ace's Tree Service, Nate's Tree Service, based out of Tuolumne County, Sonora.
Right.
So there's just not a lot of infrastructure here within the county that is active. Now,
Thank you.
we continue to conduct outreach, of course, to local contractors to make them aware of these opportunities. And so There's only just
So
enough.
they just elected not to bid on it, or?
Some are spread out. I know some of the logging companies, oops, hate it when that happens. Some of the logging companies are deployed throughout the state on commercial timber harvest, of course. That's where the money is for them. These small tree service projects sometimes just don't bring in the licensed timber operators like they should. But
Okay,
it
thank
is
you,
what
Todd.
it is. Sure.
Any other board questions? Thank you.
All right.
And if there's no other board questions,
Want to go to the roads? We skipped over that.
sure. Do you want to go back to the roads?
I know we were waiting for someone, but it's not here, let's just go.
Yeah, so again, my apologies on not having detailed updates on these. It's the advantage of being here for 4 weeks. I do have a couple of updates, and I shared a little bit with those in each of these, but we are working with Michelle and with the various agencies. There are some time extension requests that are needed. We're expecting to get those imminently, and based on that, again, our reason to push and expedite these particular projects. Blagan, with most of these, you're going to see a lot of these updates are pretty similar to what you saw previously. Again, I want to reiterate that we're in the process of doing a request for proposals for all the remaining work necessary to get this done. So with Blagan, with the bridge there, with Gwynn Mine Road, you'll see similar comments on all these in red, along with the Murphy's Drive culvert, also Canyon View, and Hoover Road. The next step on these is how do we get these from where they're at currently to construction? And the most expeditious way to do that is to select consultants that have the expertise and the manpower and the horsepower necessary to expedite this and get this through not only the design and environmental process, but also the permitting process. So realizing that we're relatively lean and can't do that in-house. So as mentioned previously, we're going to expedite each of these separately. We'll plan to bring contracts for these separately to the board at the last meeting in December, with these to actually begin pretty quickly. So the goal is to have that. These updates you're seeing here, the remaining of these, I'm happy to talk in more detail with these or get information to you on project by project basis. But each of these we'll be bringing to you in December as part of 5 separate board actions to adopt those projects, and we'll certainly have more information. And this information will also be put on the website. So,
Will the RFPs be closed by them, and you'll have?
yeah. So the RFPs are scheduled to be closed in a week. So it is an expeditious manner. We only did it for a 3-week time period. We've reached out to, I believe, well over 100 consultants that we know that have expertise in this. We have seen a lot of interest already. We're expecting multiple bidders on each project, so multiple qualified bidders. So both myself and Matt are using our various or extensive network of partners in the community to reach out to them to spur interest and kind of doing our own marketing, so to speak. So getting that kind of interest drummed up, I think will benefit the county. And our process, when we do select these and we bring them to the board, our recommendation isn't just the one who's, it's not based on the cheapest or the biggest or whatever. It's who can deliver this the fastest. I mean, that's the goal here, is we need to get these projects done. Our public's been expecting some of these for too long. And so getting these in a way to delivered quickly and appropriately is our number one mission. And those consultants that we have in the scopes of services that you'll be approving in December will reflect that.
Supervisor Oliveira, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, Josh, it's a golden question.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to get these projects done, completed by next year?
It is, Supervisor Oliveira, it is my goal to deliver each and every one of these. Now, with that said, sometimes there are things outside of our control. Federal agencies, permitting agencies. I have tricks up my sleeve that I'm planning to use to the furthest extent of my abilities to get over those hurdles and to deliver these in a timely manner. I think there are a few that there's certainly a number of those that we can do that. It's difficult for me to predict, but my goal and my number one priority here, and I've mentioned this a couple of different times, is to get this list of projects delivered next year. And I'm going to do the best of my ability to do that. So,
Thank you.
Any other board questions? If not, we'll open up to public. Any public comments, questions on this presentation? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any final comments, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. And we'll take a 10-minute break. All right, we're back from break. Madam Clerk, item number 17 is from Administrative Office.
Item 17 is to approve a second amendment to the agreement for coroner services between the County of Calaveras and Calaveras Mortuaries Incorporated that extends the term through December 31st, 2018, to authorize the county coroner to sign the second amendment to the agreement for coroner services, and authorize the county administrative officer and the county coroner to execute an amendment solely to extend the term of the agreement until on or before March 31st, 2019, if a new agreement is not reached by December 31st, 2018.
Krista,
Yes, unfortunately, Krista is sick today, so I'll be taking this item. I know that Kevin Raggio is also here, the coroner, to hopefully answer some questions, and as are other staff people from my office. Just a way of introduction, in August, the board approved one extension for this agreement. I apologize that we're coming back here with another extension without a new permanent long-term agreement. And part of this has just been an internal working out of how best to structure a new agreement long-term. As noted in the item both in August and today, this item really goes back to, or at least this agreement with the mortuary goes back to the 70s in terms of how long we've used this mortuary. So part of it is really trying to identify what makes the most sense today versus what the contract has historically provided, and that has taken quite a bit of time. What this item is requesting is an extension from now the previous October 31st to December 31st. The rate remains unchanged from the change that took effect on the last amendment that came to the board in August. It's also, our hope is to have a completed agreement back to the board by then, but there's a possibility that we won't. And so what we've included in there is that additional provision within the agreement that lets the county administrator extend it for an additional 90 days, which would then bring it out to March 31st of 2019. We're very confident that that would be the last extension we would need to do before bringing back a longer-term agreement to the board, but we wanted to provide at least a little bit of a cushion room in case we didn't get to where we needed to. Again, I'll be happy to try and entertain questions. Krista has taken the point with negotiating from my office, working with County Counsel's office, and also Mr. Raggio. So hopefully between County Counsel and Mr. Raggio, they can also answer some questions that the board may have.
any questions by our board? Supervisor Mills.
Yes, thank you for bringing this forward. How long, when you're talking about a new agreement, you're talking a 1-year agreement, 2-year, what length of time?
Historically, I believe they've been going 2 years. It'd be nice if they could go 4, and then I may not have to do this again, but I believe they're talking 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think part of it's going to be how much they're comfortable with on the rates, labor rates change, et cetera, unless we build an inflator into the contract. I don't know that it's been, I don't think we've gotten far enough to get the current rates, let alone what an inflator might be on a longer term agreement.
Yeah, and that could be part of the contract if it's more preferable to go to a 4-year agreement or 5-year agreement, whatever, as long as there's a way for you to work the rate structure as things change, and you can have a reopener to do that. That would be the only thing to do, rather than dragging us back before the board every year, every other year.
I think that's, would be a point to take up with the owners of Calaveras mortuaries. I think that's probably, they want to go 2 years at a time or something like that, so I don't have any control over that.
I understand.
I would just add, one of the things, I hear what you're saying, Supervisor Mills, and that will certainly be something that I will work with Krista on, and at least provide as an option of having a longer-term contract with having some level of a reopener. It's typically about fees. The other thing that is being discussed is right now the current contract has services for both coroner functions and also mortuary functions, and potentially separating out two separate contracts for those purposes. Just have a clean slate between what is coroner services and what are mortuary services. So those are all things that are being looked at and considered while we sit down and work with them through this process to make sure that both parties are properly covered.
The reason this is in the forefront is because of the contractual agreement with the marina at New Maloney's being a year-to-year contract, or now trying to go to an every 2-year contract. There is no stability with short-term contracts. That's my concern, is providing some form of stability from both partners in whatever that agreement is, and the longer the contract is with some options will provide that stability for both of the sides of the agreement.
I do have a question. I don't see a dollar amount associated with this.
I think it's page 6 or 7 of the,
6 or 7?
of the contract. I've got it right here.
It's my understanding that the
I think
fees
that
are not being
the issue is technically, because again, this is, the actual amount used is going to be based on what the statistics show, and we're trying to, I mean, it's because these are services that are mandated by, well, I don't know what the government code is, or the welfare institutions, or what have you, but they are mandated services that we have to provide. We don't cap contracts like that typically, as much as we have our fees that are established, and if we have X number of deaths, then that's going to be what our cost is.
I would just note that the fee schedule is in the First Amendment as attachment B, and so those.
And I guess
It's
that was more or less my question. I saw that, but are we going to adhere to that same fee structure?
It's the same as it was.
Extension, or are they asking for more? Because
No,
obviously
no.
you're in.
This
so-
extension still encompasses attachment B as the schedule for compensation.
Yeah, it's the same as the one we voted on, or you voted on
All right, I just wanted to make
2 or 3 months ago.
Any other questions? Any public comments, questions on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Supervisor Garamendi,
Second.
second by Supervisor Oliveira. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, moving on to item number 18, Madam Clerk, this is also for Administrative Office.
Item 18 is to adopt a resolution continuing emergency contracting procedures pursuant to Public Contract Code, Chapter 2.5, Section 22050, for emergency repair work necessary to skylight structures to the roofs of buildings A, D, and E of the county government campus.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bonnie Rich Administration. The construction services agreement with All Sierra Roof Company out of Jackson has been fully executed. We received the performance bond for the work to be done late Friday afternoon, and staff is working on issuing a notice to proceed for work to commence later this week. We will begin by removing the old dog houses and with the heavy construction work to be done on the weekend. We have the 16th, 17th, and 18th scheduled for buildings E and D, and November 30th through December 3rd, building A will be complete. And we will continue to report back to the board on any progress for this project at every regular scheduled meeting.
Any board comments, questions? Dennis?
Yeah, just a note, the long-range forecast is not showing any rain, so you're going to duck a bullet on that one.
Yeah, we are very aware that, and on many levels, hopeful that inclement weather is around the corner. And in working with Patrick Martin, our facilities manager, he informed me this morning that they're going to have quite a large crew on site, a crew of 20 laborers working on these roofs. And again, with the most heavy construction to be done on the weekend so as not to be disruptive to staff during normal business hours. So they're on the gun between Corey and Patrick. I'm confident they will move forward and get this work done as quickly as possible.
Well, I certainly hope with that many people on the roof, they follow OSHA procedures on working on a roof, tying off, and whatever requirements they need. So, any other board questions, comments? Not? Public? Public comments? No? Bring it back to the board, looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Mills. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 19 is from Building.
Item 19 is to authorize the board chair to execute Amendment 3 to an agreement with Four Leaf Incorporated, increasing the current contract by $100,000 for a total of $400,000 from December 31st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020.
Good morning, Chair and the Board. This is Ed Short, and I'm presenting an amendment to continue existing contracts. As you've been aware, the building construction activity here is continuing to grow, and we have bigger projects coming online. We've been struggling with one plans examiner and one inspector. We have been successful. We just started a new inspector today, but in training, so that's good news, but they're entry-level inspectors. So meaning there's some of these projects coming in, we're going to need to continue to provide augmented services here until we can be able to find the staff and train the staff and fill the positions that we need here in the future. But we're diligently working on making that happen, trying to recruit, and then we're going to be re-looking at the inspector classification like I did the plans examiner position, which we did recently hire Zach Woods, which is working out really good because we're catching up and on the turnaround time. So this is really to continue our services and inspection side. Four Leaf is probably the more predominant one for inspections, and BV is more of the next one on item 20 to be for more plan reserve, which we've been cutting back on that. So again, this is pass-through money from permits that we collect and we provide it. So this is our amendments for existing contracts. I am planning to go out and to reboot this older contracts in the near future with a new RFP as soon as we get these done, so that we can reboot the whole system and get a new RFP out. So that's what we're planning to do. Any questions on this?
Supervisor Mills?
Yes, good morning, Ed. The question that I have is this able to provide the inspections, the fire inspections as well?
We have the potential in there. I think they have fire inspections. I think there was an amendment prior to me getting here for fire, but it's really hard to find fire inspectors. We had one up here at one time, but the consultant services out there, it's just hard to even find qualified folks up there. So this is really more for building inspections, not to resolve the fire issues that we have with fire inspections.
So the commercial plan checking and the fire sprinklers in residential is now being required is separate from?
We are doing the fire sprinklers for residential. The fire chiefs allow that to it because it's fairly simple to do in-house. We're doing that in-house, incorporated. So that is for residential. We are commercial. That's a different story because it gets a lot more complex.
As we have projects starting to ramp up in my district, for instance, I want to be sure that we have adequate staffing or extra hire positions to fulfill those requirements and not drag plane checking out, extend them.
Right, and that's what we're trying to do, get some staff trained to get more complex projects. But big commercial projects like, bigger systems like a hotel or something like that, those are complex. That's why we do need to have some expert help on the complex ones.
And that would be my major concern.
Right. We would
Right
need-
there.
Yes, and that's what this will help. Keeps us there, and we're kind of shovel ready. If we do need it, we don't have to use it all the time, but we've been having a lot of construction activity. It has not slowed down, and our inspectors are working a lot of time. It's like 40 inspections a day constantly. It's a lot of workload, especially with the windshield time we have here.
Well, I appreciate the work that the staff is doing on the influx that's occurring, and I don't think that we really fully understand from where we are just how much that happens, or how much is happening right now in the county.
It's quite a bit, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Short.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for coming in.
Thank you.
Real simple question. If we had the resources and staff to do this particular task, how much more is it costing us to use four-leaf?
Well, we do have salary savings on not having positions, so that's a good point. The consulting service do cost more money in the long run. It's supposed to be for augmentation, use it as needed when you have peak workloads. So when you have peak workloads, you use them there, and then you don't use them. So that's how we're using it, as for peak workloads and that. So actually having staff here would actually, in the long run, save us money. And that's why we're trying to recruit as best as we can to get people here to do that.
Okay. I heard an ugly rumor.
Okay.
700 square foot project.
Okay.
Addition. $11,000 in fees.
Wow.
Does that sound good? Is that accurate?
Doesn't sound correct. Doesn't sound correct at all.
Go ahead, Mr. Garamendi.
Impact fees.
I have your estimate from your office up to that.
Does it include
And
impact fees?
it was over $3,000 to check that by Veritas here. You could have, that's probably more than it cost to draw the plans from the architect and engineer. So I have great concern. I don't mean to take your time, Supervisor.
Go right ahead.
I have grave concerns about the speed and cost that we're incurring here. I have another line of question, but I didn't want to take away your time, Supervisor.
Supervisor, there was one that was incorrect. I do correct them. Sometimes they get them wrong, or there are other ones we go back and we readjust them.
So what do you mean? What do you mean by what's incorrect and you have to go back?
Well, they might have billed it wrong, and there could have been some errors in there, or if they did it incorrectly. So we look at them. Sometimes some projects, they'll come in and they restart a whole new project. So there's like 2 reviews in it, so you have to really dig deep and look at it closer. So it could have been like they could have started a project and then stopped it and created another project within the same plan review. So that's why it can accumulate really high. So there's been a couple instances like that. People change their mind midstream. And so, but the whole idea of the RFP is to reboot our system when I'm coming over here with a fee schedule. New fee schedule is going to be on valuation method that we're proposing. The new contracts will be based on percentages. So the percentages, the way these contracts were done a long time ago, I agree, these are hourly. These are not the way to go with contracts. So when we go out with the RFP, we're going to try to bid it with the new fee schedule to go on a percentage basis so that we never have money, we're never upside down any monies. You're always collecting only a percentage of the total money we're collecting. And that's the way the new fee schedule will work and new RFPs will work. So that's why we're trying to fix that in the near future.
Mr. Short, a couple of more issues. We've been using four-leaf for a while. I understand we've had some problems with delays of getting back plan checks and things. Has that problem been solved?
Problem's been solved, yes, sir.
Okay, so they're performing an acceptable
Yes.
time period?
Yes. We've done a few innovative things. We're using for residential, we're using a template that takes out 85% of those comments and reduces this cost down to a fraction. We're seeing when we're not sending in residential out now because I have the ability to do that. It's mostly commercial, but we reduced the cost down by almost 300% by doing some innovative issues.
Sorry, could you say that again?
About 300%.
What, no, the part before that?
We sent out templates. These are templates where there was a lot of reviewers would put a lot of standard comments down. We have published a template. You can go on our website, and we already, in the industry work group, we've already had this. It's very successful. It takes care of all the standard comments, like WUI requirements, the interface, all the standard. They just take that and they attach it to their plans, they sign it, and it takes 85% of the comments away. So when we were sending out, it reduced down the plan checks like $400, $500. We have the invoices on it. So it dropped all those things that you're talking about right off the cliff. So we were able to do that.
And our Track It is going to be helpful in this problem?
Yes, Track It will be able to track our time better. We'll have a better cost accounting system in there and resolve a lot of the fee problems. In conjunction with the fee proposal, we're going to come up here soon. That'll all solve these problems we're all concerned with because of the inconsistencies and the fees and the ability to have it calculated naturally in there without anybody making any errors. Because the way the system is now, it has inconsistencies and the potential for errors.
And when is the projected implementation date for Track It?
Right now, we're in negotiation with them. As we're talking, it could be March, but I will know more this week. We had a whole session last week with the Track It folks. A new project team has come with us, and I'm really excited. I think the team is really good, and I think we're going to get back on track. And so we're talking like a 2-month delay, so around March or so like that. But I'll have more information here shortly, and I'll keep you guys up to date when that happens. The sooner the better, but we need because that system is going to streamline our process and make all these issues that we're talking about will all go away.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. My main concern here is speaking with our contractors, especially up in District 3, we have a lot of construction activity going on now, and I've heard good and bad. I've heard delays, things of that sort. I want to make sure we're on the right track to get these problems solved. And I understand our resource problem, or lack thereof. And I understand you're doing a lot to fill those voids. I just hope we're going in the right direction at the best possible speed we can.
I believe so. With the limited resources we have, we're doing really well. I think once we get the Track It system and the new fee schedule in place, I think you're going to see a really good system in place that's going to resolve a lot of these issues that we've been seeing for years here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I hear lots of good and bad, but not so much good these days. And I have grave concerns. These positions that we're contracting out for over $400,000, have we consulted, these are union represented positions in your department. Have we consulted clearly with the union?
I believe so. Judy might be the
I
best one.
don't see Judy here, but yes, I did get confirmation. We did do a meeting with the union to address any concerns that they have, and I have that in email from Judy.
Okay, because I'd like to see that in email from the union as well. I know there were some discrepancies last time I asked this question as to whether they've been consulted, and they have a he said, she said. So I would like to have that out there because we're paying these consultants a lot more money than we're paying our workers.
No,
and it's costing us a lot of money to get this done.
And mind you that part of that discussion is that this isn't a long-term solution. I think the union understandably would have larger concerns if we were using this as a long-term solution as much as trying to get positions filled.
We're from through 2020, it could be a long-term. We can't say when this thing's going to go because it's got a open-ended. These funds for this, they come out of an account, and you noted here, 0580. Was there a balance at that at the beginning of the year? And
Yes, the board approved that previously in the budget hearing, so there's already appropriated in there. This is just aligning it with what you already approved.
So are we appropriating more money, or is that?
The 100 is actually 100.
So that's coming from the general fund, right?
No, not general fund. This is free. This is permit fees collected. It's not general fund.
There was a balance in that at the beginning of the year, correct?
No, there's no general fund. Building is a totally enterprise fund.
But how much is in that enterprise? How much was in that enterprise fund? I'm trying to figure out how much was in it, how much is going to be in it at the end of the year.
Are you talking about the reserve?
The reserves, whatever funds you guys use. I don't memorize the numbers.
This is pass-through money basically from permit fees from our budget. It doesn't rely on reserve funds. So it's pass-through.
And I don't have the fund balance numbers in front of me. This item wasn't contemplating that. Certainly I can research that and come back to the board with that.
One of my concerns are, we're spending a lot of money on these consultants, not getting, you're saying we're getting positive results. I'm not feeling it, and I'm wondering whether we're going to have enough money to continue this in the future. If we're burning through our reserves and we get to June,
Right,
And that's
and
it.
I agree. That's why I want to go out and get an RFP to fix that problem, because these contracts are so old. All that money was spent on the last 2 years. So if we do the RFP and the new fee study update, it will resolve a lot of the issues that you're talking about, because it'll be on a percentage, and you only use it when you have to use it, when like a complex project comes in, or peak workloads. You don't want to use it as a long-term solution.
I know that we had, in our statement, we were just talking a little bit about the track-it system, and your statement was all issues will go away. I'd be surprised if one computer system makes all issues go away. But are we connecting the APNs and these projects as we go through multiple subdivisions of land over time, building permits? Is it all going to be there? So when I ask a question about, APN 123, you can say, that was split by Supervisor Tofinelli 10 years ago. There's a building permit on it. Before that, it was patented back to here. So we have this all. Is it going to be seamless between your office, the assessor's office, and planning?
Yes, the track assistant has a way to do that, and it has the parcel history, the father and child relationships, and we've had a lot of discussions how to do that, yes.
Are we going to populate it? I mean, it has the ability to do that, but are we going to fill it in?
It would be all filled in, and it will have some history in there so that we know when the permits, the parcel splits happen, we'll have some history in there, and there is a process to do that.
That's a lot of legwork to get that done.
Yes.
And I hope we can automate it so 10 years from now, someone doesn't have to have this conversation.
With accurate records.
Yes, that
With
would be
accurate
nice.
records.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that happens. I have a lot of questions about how all these things are going forward, and I don't know if we'll be able to answer them here. I'm very hesitant to just write another check for $100,000 when I'm not sure who to believe on what. I would advise we'd have some sort of study session about what's going on in building, and are we meeting our roles? We need to have a conversation about, what is the role? Do we need to have 100% cost recovery, or do we need to find ways to stimulate more building? You sent me numbers. I've got 105 completed buildings in the Butte fire zone out of over 700 that were burnt. So we need to find ways to be more effective, make it more affordable for people to rebuild or build new. And we've extended these. We've had this conversation. And all due respect, I'm not convinced, and I will withhold my vote on this until we have some sort of study session about this specifically.
Okay.
Jack, can I add in on that? I know the first part of the year we wiped off, I want to say $160,000 that was out of the Teeter Fund that was supplementing them, and it's just gone. So I agree with you. I think we need to look at this a lot harder.
Mr. Short, with your comments about having a new inspector starting today, and we still have 2 open positions?
Still have one position open.
We have one open position.
And we have actually one inspector that's not able to inspect.
We have an inspector
Right,
that's not able to inspect.
on accommodation method right now, so we're down inspectors. So we're
Is he
technically
able to
have,
do plan review?
they're not here.
They're not here.
They're not here.
So the one that's starting today actually isn't, we're not gaining anything.
Not for a while, and it's an entry-level position. But that's the best we can do in recruiting up here at this moment, based on our competitiveness for salary range right now.
So how long is this training?
We're just going to do some ride-alongs for at least a week, and we're going to put them very simple projects after that, so that we put them into a place where that they have their capabilities to do it. So I think we're going to be okay in the next couple of weeks on the simpler project, and we're hoping it will slow down here and during the holidays, so that'll give us a little bit more time for a relief time to do some better training.
Is his training or experience to do with residential or commercial or both?
We could do a little bit of both, yes.
He's done a
Simple commercial, but not...
Simple commercial.
Commercial, but mostly residential, yeah.
So, in understanding Supervisor Garamendi's concerns, I was hoping to get, if we had another inspector coming on, that we necessarily won't be spending this $100,000. If we can get up to speed, we wouldn't be sending out or using their services as much for their inspection if we had inspectors here that we would send out ourselves that were employed by us. So the potential could be, if you get up to speed, that we wouldn't be spending this whole $100,000.
That's our plan, is to throttle back, yes.
And I too, I got to tell you, I don't know how long you started using this template, but one of the main complaints that I have from constituents I hear from is it takes 6 months for plan review for simple structure or house addition or something like that. It just seems incredibly long once you have a stamp on it from an engineer. You should be looking for what our ordinances have to do with and going through some of that. I don't see 6 months. I don't know if what you're talking about now is reducing that.
Yes, we're caught up on all our turnaround times. We're within 2 weeks on all the plan checks. We've been meeting all those. So I don't know about the 6 months. 2 weeks.
Plan reviews starting from when? A month ago, starting from a week ago?
No, we've been caught up over a month.
Over a month?
Yes.
Okay, and I have heard some complaints, like Supervisor Garamendi had brought up, the amount of money that's being charged for the services.
Yeah, it was, the original contracts are based on hourly rates. So if really bad plans come in, stuff, that's where you were seeing a lot of hours on it. That has been resolved with the template. That brought it way down. So we're not even sending them out right now for residential, only commercial. Commercials are more complex, and our staff is not.
Well, you have the inspection, especially on commercial, and the one I was hearing about extensive fees was on a commercial building.
Oh, okay.
And the number of inspections that were required for it, which...
Well, all the new square footages are based on the fee schedules that the board adopted many years ago. So they're right in Permit Plus, the system we have now. So all those fees have been adopted. So when we do, I think with the workshop, I think doing the fee study and coming back with the project on the Track It system, I can do that. But those are kind of providing the services now, though. This is really something that we really do need to have now. Because if not, I would have to let all the contract inspectors go, and we would have down to no turnaround times. We would have maybe a 2-week turnover, rollovers on inspection, because the inspections are just keep coming in. They're not slowing down. 40 a day, and if one inspector, we only have one inspector, that's just too much workload for one inspector at this point. So I can't overemphasize how important this is.
There was some questions a while back about when a PEM building, pre-manufactured metal building comes to us, and the amount of time that's for review of that building, and then the inspections, especially the high-grade nut inspection, or high-grade bolts. Have we done anything on reducing the amount of time for review on those, since those are pre-manufactured?
Yeah, all across
engineering
all across the board, we're even doing over-the-counter reviews now. We have the extra capacity with Zach, because he's also an engineering training. He just took an exam, so he can do engineering too. So we're very fortunate to have Zach Wood here. We're very fortunate to have him because he's able to provide that kind of service now over the counter, or even more expedient reviews. So those metal buildings are just fast now with his ability to do that.
Okay. Supervisor Oliveira, your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more quick question, Mr. Short. When we have plans checked in-house and have plans checked through an outside contractor, is that fee the same?
It's based on an hourly rate.
Yeah, it's based on an hourly rate, but that rate is the same whether it's done in-house or whether it's done by an outside contractor, correct?
No, if we do it in-house, it's a salary. It's an employee we have here, so you actually can get more production out of an employee. So the ideal is to have in-house plans examiners here.
So what you're saying, the fee rate is the same, but it might be based on the period of time it takes to check that plan. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
And typically, when we go outside, contractors like Four Leaf, Is that time, when you compare that to an in-house, and I know we don't have the resources to do that, is that basically equal, or is it?
Yes, I mean, I look at all the hours, I've been doing this for years, and look at how much time it takes for a plan review, and depends on the quality of the plan that comes in. We have some really bad plans that come in, or people change, those take a little longer. If you have really good plans done by an engineer or architect, those are a lot quicker, and there's less issues with those. So you just have to look at the quality of the plans. It's not you have to really dig deep when you see an invoice for a lot more. There could be a lot of underlying issues that might cause that, like the one for people changing their mind midstream, and that's just like another review. So you have to look at the plans and the comments. But yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
We'll open it up to public comments on this issue. Any public comments?
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association, and I want to thank our building official for the improvements that he's been doing, particularly in the turnaround time on residential, from what I'm hearing. And also, I appreciate the comments from Michael and Gary that seem to have their ears to what's going on in our county regarding delays in construction. The taxpayers are concerned about this in two ways. The first way is what's this doing to our economy, and how's that affecting our taxpayers? And the second thing is what's this doing to property rights? If county government prevents a person from building on their property for whatever reason, the reason can only be for protect the public safety. It can't be from not being able to function. If county government is not able to function, you have a real violation of that person's property rights. They have a right to build on their property. So, bottom line, there's another aspect to building that's not mentioned very often. We've been building up the amount of regulations on building pretty extensively. It's well meant, but it's over the top in some places. I understand that people in our county, our county is not an earthquake prone county. Our area is not prone to earthquake danger. However, we are employing earthquake standards in construction, which are quite expensive, and has been doing it all along, and nobody seems to care. The contractors make more money. The property owners think that it must be needed because government says so. But in studying our operations, if you have a committee to really look at our operations, we should extend that to everything that's done in the way of regulations in our county. A lot of it is imposed by the state. And if we identify some things that are really hurtful, such as that one, we need to be able to communicate with the state to bring about a process of resolving that, to reform some of the state laws as it pertains to building. And I think it can be done. We have CSAC and RC, and we have good supervisors that are able to communicate if they're aware of the problem. So, thank you.
Al. Any other public comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I just need to make one more comment. Mr. Short, one of my grave concerns is that if we don't improve in our process, people are not going to be getting permits. They're just going to go ahead with their construction on remodels and things of that sort. What kind of pressure is that going to put on your other department, your code compliance?
Well, we work hand in hand with our building inspectors and compliance on a lot of issues. So if we don't have the staff to keep up, it will put a lot of pressure on us. We will be seeing rollovers on inspections more in 48 hours. It'll probably go about 2 weeks. Because if I don't get approved today, I would have to let the contract person go by tomorrow. because it's just, we won't be able to accumulate any more bills. Our burn rate is about $25,000 a month. I let another already contractor go, so we're down to one, so I'd have to let that one go. Our inspectors will be suffering big time to try to keep up with the turnaround times. Plan review are a little bit better right now because plan reviews, a lot of the big projects are in the hopper right now, like the hotel, subdivisions. The subdivisions are coming around the corner. We're not going to be postured to even have enough inspectors to handle that type of workload coming in spring or like that. So we would be really hurting big time. Our service levels would go completely down. That's what will happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Garamendi?
So you just said that if we don't approve this, we're going to go from 2 days for inspections to 2 weeks for site inspections, and that's going to happen immediately.
Yeah, because I won't be able to.
So you come in here and you're holding a gun to our head,
Well,
saying if we don't do this for you at this point, we're going to delay everybody by 2 weeks.
What I'm trying to say is the service levels, I would have to let the inspectors to stop accumulating the bills, and then turnaround times, the service levels will go. That's what happened. I'm not saying that's what I'm trying to let you know.
That's kind of, it's nice to have some runway before we have to make these decisions.
Supervisor Mills?
Yes, thank you. I think if this board wants to have a separate discussion or a study session, I would understand the reason for that. You also know that this is the lull period in the construction season. They're going to start bringing in plans in February and March to start popping off the ground in April. So where this whole situation will exacerbate itself will be sometime in early spring. And if we don't have the proper support in place with outside help, extra hire, it's just going to make it even worse by the time we get into spring. So I hope that the board would not delay this kind of an activity, and if we need to look at it from a larger perspective, fine. But what's here is only to help to ensure that our constituents are being taken care of in a timely manner.
Correct. It's to continue the service levels that we're trying to provide. We're actually be able to provide the inspections within that time period right now. When we get the new system in place, that'll help us, because once we get the new system in place, the inspections, the scheduling part, will get easier, a lot easier.
And when do you?
And the construction activity has not slowed down. The inspection, we thought that would happen right now, but the inspections keep coming in.
And when do you plan to have that in effect?
Which one?
To increase and schedule out all the inspections?
We're scheduling out 2 days right now because we got a new inspector in there, but we try to roll out for 2 days right now. If we have to let the other contractor go, then it might take longer, like I was saying earlier, because they just can't do the workload. They have to roll it out.
Well, the next agenda item is dealing with the same thing.
Yeah, it's a duplicate. It's basically a duplicate. It's just 2 contractors available for us to do the work.
And to Supervisor Garamendi's comments, I certainly understand the fact if you don't have inspectors or enough inspectors and the workload grows, that it's going to delay the time. And I think that's what you were trying to convey, that you can get an inspector to site. And being in the business, I can certainly understand. And to Supervisor Mills' comments about a lull in construction, things are booming right now. And I think they will continue to boom. Commercial it doesn't matter the time of year. You work, rain, shine, what have you, the residential area, but in what a statement was made earlier about immediate range for no rain coming in, that's going to dictate whether we have a long periods of rain, whether it's going to slow down a little bit for your inspection level of it. Maybe not so much plans coming in for plan check, but there are a lot of projects out there that have already been permitted that will continue to go. It's going to require inspection. And my concerns are having the ability to get and have proper inspection out there so something is not covered up or missed, and then later on coming back and being a problem. Especially when you talk about structure or you talk about electrical. Those are issues that seemed to come back, and I don't want to get to the point where we didn't have inspection, so we covered up sheetrock on electrical and moving forward, because we were, did not have inspection available, so.
No, those are true,
I have
and that's why it's not slowing down.
Yeah.
The rain, no rain. It just keeps coming in, 30, 40 inspections a day. It's a big workload.
It is, very much so. Even PG&E will not even connect power up to the panel until it's been certified, and you guys
Right.
have, yeah,
Right.
so, very important. Supervisor Olivero, your light's on?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. One more quick comment. We're looking at extending this contract to $400,000 until June 30th of 2020. You mentioned that one of the problems we have in recruiting inspectors and plan checkers is compensation package.
Correct.
Off the top of your head, and I know this is, I'm not going to hold you to the accuracy on this, our surrounding counties, how do we compare with that with our compensation package for a plan checker or building inspector?
I think Tim might be able to answer. I think he had some numbers. It was like 20, 22%. Right?
I'm sorry, I admit I missed
Caught
the
you sleeping,
question.
didn't I?
You did.
Yeah, he was talking about our surrounding areas, and remember we were talking about the inspector rate, salary step rates that were behind a little bit.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we do have that information. I just don't have it with me. I might have to go back and.
Off the
pull
top
it.
of your head, are we below that level?
Oh,
I think we were tracking a little below. I don't recall, I don't recall how far below. Certainly, I think, were the inspectors targeted for a 5% equity? Do you recall?
yes, they were, but I think the total step salary between following and area, I think it's more than
Which,
that.
if they were targeted for an equity, it means they were above 15% out overall.
Okay. My point is, we're going to be spending $400,000, hopefully not till 2020.
Oh, let me clarify. This is not, the $300,000 is already spent, guys. This is just an amendment to go to another $100,000 that was already approved by the board in the budget hearings. So this is not another 400. That all money is already spent.
My
This is just an
point being,
amendment to
can we
extend it
use
out.
those monies to maybe bolster our recruiting?
Yes, that's what I was saying. It would be best to go relook at our salaries and our inspectors and go through this process. We're planning to do that. Like I did the plans examiners, that's how I was able to recruit Zach, because we made it a little bit more appealing for a plans examiner to come up here or be here. We just looked at he was also homegrown here, but it makes it more competitive with your surrounding jurisdictions with plans examiners and inspectors. That has been the issue in the industry all throughout California right now. It's really hard to find people to get them up here. Across the board, that doesn't matter where you go right now. Inspectors and plans examiners are just hard to find.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Do you think we could re-look at this and revisit this at midterm, see where we are and see what the salary range is? And you're right, if it was below 15%, we gave a 5% equity. I don't remember offhand whether inspections or plan check was part of that, but if we can bring this back at midterm and relook at it and look at the dollar amount we're spending at that point, which will be about 3 months, 4 months down the road on these two contracts that we're dealing with today, we can get at least a view of what we're spending and versus what we have to recruit.
So I'm quite, you're talking about maybe a salary survey discussion, or?
I'm talking about with CEO Tim Lutz about bringing it back at midterm and seeing on these two contracts that we're approving today, where we are on these $100,000 versus where we are salary-wise for inspectors, and if we've recruited any between now and midterm.
Yeah, and I think that would be reasonable, because I think really we're talking about that cost comparison about, we know it's more expensive for us to be contracted out. We need to have a plan forward to get inspectors in and productive so we can pull away from these contracts. And what we should be working on from now to mid-year is really trying to identify where we're at to then come back to the board if there needs to be additional recommendations, like looking at the salary, et cetera.
And I will say this, being in the trade for a long time, it's not uncommon for cities or counties to go outside and contract work out, especially when there's a abundance of work and you're swamped. There are these contracts that are laying out there. They're not, the money's not used a whole lot because they recruit and bring in as the work level goes up, as construction starts going up. It's not that uncommon to see. My concerns are, though, is it becoming the norm here? Are we not, and which kind of sounds like with not being able to recruit, that it's turning into that. And that's what we want to avoid. We can keep these in place as long as we have a spike up and we need to send some of it out.
Right.
In the meantime, we're recruiting because of that spike and going forward, and
Right.
we're using our people to do so. But again,
that's the way to,
it's not uncommon.
Yeah, that's the way to do contract services on spike level.
Yeah.
But it's been here for the last 3 years or so, been just the norm to use, because there's no staff in place to do it, so they had to use contract services, including the billing official.
If I could add, Chairman, when we have that conversation here, and I would like to have that as a broader conversation as well as the functioning of the building department. I'd like to go in depth and understand all the processes that we're paying for, and that way when we take a look at the fee schedule, which I know in the budget document you said would be in September, but lots of things are going on. And so we could take the fee schedule into context of all the things that we've got going on. I also want us to make sure that when we have that conversation, we have perhaps some input from our economic development person about how when we build correctly and we build quickly, there are residual benefits to the community and to our county, and increased property taxes and consumer goods and sales taxes. So we could take that into consideration as we look at these fees. Because I'm assuming you're going to come and ask for more, not for increase rather than a decrease in fees. So I want to make sure I understand exactly how that would be justified in the larger context of economic health for our county.
Okay.
Supervisor Mills?
I can recall in Alameda County having inspectors done by instructors from Chabot College. So having outside contractors has been in place for decades. I think that we really need to have a review of these contracts at mid-year, see where they're going. Use the term spent out. I think that's a misnomer, only because you're spending out the contract. It isn't that we're not getting the money back for what we're doing with it. And I agree with Supervisor Garamendi, because this is something that's been on my mind with a project that's going on right now in Copperopolis, that economic development needs to be fully engaged in these larger projects, that we don't create an impediment. But as you know, there's economy of scale. And so as they start putting large projects on the ground that have a lot of similarities, things start to flow a lot differently than a single project would flow. So I just want to be sure that we're not creating impediments to our construction trades, but at the same time that we are providing the safety aspect that's needed to ensure that we're meeting the requirements of building and plumbing codes, et cetera. So that's my only point.
All right, that being said, I'm open for a motion.
I will move to extend the contract.
I have a second. I have no second. I'll second the motion, because I understand the need for inspection right now. I don't necessarily agree totally with what's going on, but I still understand that we would be putting our constituents in a position to where they have no, or they're waiting for inspectors to come before they can proceed. So I truly understand that. So I will second that motion. Any other conversations? Supervisor Oliveira?
Mr. Chair, I would entertain that before the vote, that we do bring this issue back at midterm and look at these contracts. Does that require amendment of, can we vote on this, county council, then make that request?
There is an existing motion and second on the floor, So I would imagine you would need to take action on that before any further direction.
Okay, thank you.
I think what you're looking for then is that if we vote on this matter and maybe subsequently item number 20, that we poll the board for direction to staff to do that and
Yeah,
solve
the
it,
next item is
solve it in that
basically
way.
Same thing, only a different
Right.
company.
And just solve it going forward, so 3 months from now or at mid-year, we have those discussions, but it's a separate discussion, separate issue.
That's what I was trying to get to when I was talking earlier, that at midterm, we can look at this and see where we're at, see what's going on, and make some adjustments. And I know this $100,000 is not going to be gone overnight. It goes till 2020, June of 2020, which is the end of that fiscal year. So I just have, I understand the concerns, I understand their comments, I feel somewhat the same way, but I still feel that if we're going to go down this road and we don't have the proper amount of votes here to do this, what we're doing to projects right now that are in construction phase that need inspection, and not being able to have the number of inspectors that are needed to cover that. You can look at the amount of inspections that he's put in this comment period, in this discussion of summary, that are going on a weekly basis, and some of them are up 40, 50, 60 inspections.
Mr. Chair, I
that's
believe
how many-
county council needs your attention.
So,
I just wanted to clarify that there is a motion and a second on the table, and either way, if it's approved or not, the board can still direct staff to bring something back at a future date for further consideration. Just because if it's approved or if it's not approved, either way, you can still make that direction and consider something different at a future board meeting.
and that is my concern, and the only way I can see that we can have a conversation would be at midterm, where we can take a look. Okay, in November we gave you $100,000 for this contract. We want to know what's been expended. We want to know if you've hired more. How is your recruiting? If the recruiting's not good and you haven't hired any more inspectors to start chiming this down or bringing this down on this contract, because we have the proper number of inspectors that are needed at this time. What can we do at this time to take care of that situation? Is it an increase in salaries? What comparative do we have from Amador to Tuolumne or so forth that we can recruit and get to where we need to be? But putting out there, which there was a comment made by a supervisor earlier on this issue about not getting permits or not getting inspections and just covering up and going forward it. To me, that if we don't at least go down this road now and revisit it in 3 or 4 months at midterm, we're putting even more pressure on that happening, or even just covering up because they couldn't wait for inspection and then going down that road, and then it makes the inspection a little bit more difficult and more time at that site trying to uncover something or look at something, or having them cut a hole in so you can look, and it's not really doing the full inspection, but they're trying to get something done, or they're in a hurry because of weather coming, and they didn't have time to wait for an inspector, otherwise it would rain and destroy, and they'd have to start over. So those are my concerns, as to why I'm made the second, and I'm going to vote for this, because I understand that portion of it, but I still think, again, at midterm, we can relook at this thing a little bit more time. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. We have 3-2.
Mr. Chair.
We had public comment. Nobody came up.
Yeah, no, we had, Al did.
Oh, we had Al Segalia come up and talk. Yeah, Al came up and talk.
Mr. Chair, can we poll the board and put that issue just discussed regarding the midterm review? Do you need a poll of the board for that?
Yeah, we
Or do
poll the board.
Or do we need to wait for our next agenda item?
No, we can pull the board right now. But,
Poll the board, please.
Supervisor
Yes.
Clapp? Yes. Supervisor Mills?
Yes?
Supervisor Olivera?
Yes.
Supervisor Garamendi? Yes. And I'm a yes. Of course, I
Thank
brought
you,
it up
sir.
that we needed to do.
Thank you, Mr. Short.
And I will bring that back, and all the information you guys want, okay?
Good.
Next item, same thing.
Moving on to item.
Take a break.
Can we take a break? We'll take a 20-minute break. Excuse me, a 10-minute break. We are back, and we are going on to item number 20. Again, this is from the building.
So item 20 is to authorize the board chair to execute Amendment 5 to an agreement with Bureau Veritas North America, increasing the current contract by $100,000 for a total of $400,000 from December 31st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020.
Same thing as the last agenda, is just that COD PV is the one we usually use for plan review for expert services, fire reviews, and commercial type projects. But we're not sending them any residential as of today. So that's, we're not sending them residential reviews. We're doing all those in-house with the template. So we're going to use them just for commercial type of complex projects because they have a good staff there that does good commercial work.
Do they have any commercial plan reviews in front of them right now?
I think we have some residual ones we're finishing out, but I think we're not sending out any new ones. If, like the hotel one that comes in, they would probably have to do it because we don't have the expertise staff in the house to do that right now.
Board comments? No board comments? Public comments?
Alsa County Taxpayer Association. And once again, I'd like to compliment our building official for the corrections that he's done and of some of the problems that were occurring. But looking at this in reality, we need to look at everything. To me, it makes sense if you have a major catastrophe like a fire and you have 700 homes that are going to be rebuilt, and they can't be because there's not enough county personnel to handle it. It makes sense to go ahead and hire outside help to take care of that problem so that there's no delay in meeting that emergency. For the cost of it, I think that part of it would be borne by the building permit fees. But that's only one thing. It makes sense to get an expert to look at not only the operation of our building department, but also look at the laws itself. How many of these regulations that are coming down are actually costing our property owners their ability to build? I mentioned one, but I understand there's quite a few other ones. And all of them stack up the cost of building to get to a point where it doesn't make sense to build. And it'd be better to go into the county to build. And so we'd recommend that you get the brains and the talent needed to do a study, not only the operation of the building department, but also the effects of the regulations imposed on our county. And if you can do that, maybe we'll see some light at the end of the tunnel. It might be a while, but at least we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion or comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll move.
We have a motion by Supervisor Olivera. We have a second.
Second.
A second by Supervisor Mills. Any other comments? If not, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes 4-1. Moving on to item number 21. By planning.
Item 21 is from the Planning Department to adopt a resolution establishing an agricultural preserve and Williamson Act contract number 363 for Mark Connolly.
Mr. Chair, If it's all right, I choose to recuse myself. Mark Conley is a relative of mine, and I should not be sitting up here for this conversation.
Yeah, I too will be. I too will be recusing myself from this item and the next item. My property is within 500 feet from these properties, and I sit on my porch and look directly out over the property. And according to FPPC rules, if you're within 500 feet and you're sitting on a board making a decision, that you should recuse yourself. So I will be recusing myself on that FPPC rules. So
Sorry, Gina.
I will pass the gavel on to, if you guys want to decide, you want Supervisor Oliveira for these issues.
Last act.
Tag, you're it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pro Tem.
Okay, good morning. So, as mentioned, this item and the following item are actually two separate actions, but one project, so we're going to discuss them together. For your consideration, you have Ag Preserve Contract number 363 for Mark Connolly. It consists of two contiguous parcels totaling 176.01 acres of land located in the Burson area of our county. The current ag operation includes 58 head of cattle grazing on both dry and irrigated pasture. The Calaveras County Farm Advisor conducted a feasibility study on the land indicating the land's capability of meeting the minimum gross annual income of $2,000 required. The application was considered by the Ag Advisory Committee in addition to our Agriculture Commissioner, reviewed by both, and based on historical evidence of agricultural operations, including the feasibility study, the land has the ability to sustain viable agriculture operations. Therefore, their recommendation to you is to establish the agriculture preserve by entering into a Williams Act contract. In addition, the application was heard by your Planning Commission, and they considered the merits of the proposal and concur with the Ag Advisory Committee. In addition, they recommend you not only establish the contract, but amend the zoning, which is the second part of this application, amend the zoning of the properties from the current unclassified zone district to the Ag Preserve Zone District, or better known as AP, which is signifying the Williamson Act.
Okay, thank you. Any comments by the board? Seeing none, Mr. Maurer, do you have any input on this? Okay. Public comment, please.
Mark Conley, I'm the applicant, and I hope this is going to be the least controversial thing of today's. I just want to give you a little bit of background. Philip and Hazel Kane own this property. They did an excellent job of preserving 170 plus acres in the middle of an area that's surrounded by subdivisions, and they resisted and fought all attempts to subdivide it and interfere with its agricultural operation. And it was their intent that the property be continued in perpetuity as a cattle ranch, and so this is one step in continuing that process. So the property, the irrigation system has been brought up to, almost completely brought up to its full-scale production, all cylinders firing. It's been refenced, and we hope in the long term that your chairman will be able to sit on his front porch and look across, and for the rest of his lifetime, and hopefully mine, and as far off as we can see just what he sees now, which is cattle grazing on this property, much as it was when Philip and Hazel Kane owned and operated the Kane Ranch. So thank you. I'm here if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? Mr. Mills.
Something to always keep in mind in that area is that it is now part of the Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater Basin Authority. And as such, it is going to be subject, maybe not immediately in the 2020 plans, but will be in by 2040. There is going to be a possibility that overdrafting or mitigating overdrafting will be a topic of grave discussion. So moving this into the agricultural preserve helps to mitigate or limit to some degree that future potential, and for that reason I support what you're trying to do.
Further comment by the board or staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to move.
Moved by Supervisor Clapp.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Seeing none, motion passes. 3 and 2 abstentions.
The second item.
Thank you.
She's to read the next
Our next issue
The-
is,
Item 22 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt an ordinance approving the zoning amendment to agricultural preserve to recognize Williamson Act Contract Number 363 for Mark Connolly and authorize a summary publication.
So as mentioned before, this is the second half of the whole project. So we just voted to establish the contract. So now the second part of that is to approve the zoning amendment from unclassified to ag preserve, signifying the Williamson Act.
thank you. Comment, Mr. Mauer? Comments by the board? Public comment?
My only comment would be to didn't thank last time your staff also for being so helpful in this and help facilitating this forward, and to thank the Planning Commission for forwarding it to you with a positive recommendation. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Any further public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the board, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Clapp.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying no. Hearing none, motion passes 3, 2 abstentions.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
No, they're going to, yeah.
I think we'll,
It's going to get one of them.
we'll take a short little in-seat break.
That was fast. I opened my lunch.
I'll pass the gavel back to Board Chair, Mr. Tofinelli.
Item 23 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing, adopt the negative declaration, and adopt zoning ordinance amendment to Title 17, adding Chapter 17.52, Design Review, and authorize a summary publication.
Good morning, Peter Mauer, the Planning Director. This is sort of a 3-step process that looks at the design review provisions, the design guidelines for McCallamy Hill, and the desire by that community to remove the planned development combining zone and replace it with the design review combining zone. So I'm going to sort of go between the three, but I'm going to focus on the first presentation here just on the ordinance itself, but they're all linked together here. So in 2013 or 2012, the Board of Supervisors adopted design guidelines, historic design guidelines for the community of McCallamy Hill. Those have been used by the Planning Department and the county in approval of projects But in order to implement those, the community plan has a plan development combining zone and land use designation for all of the commercial areas as well as the residential areas in the core historic part of McCallamy Hill. So the two, what they call the gateway areas, where 26 and 49 come together, as well as the sort of northwestern end of town where the restaurant is, or some other commercially zoned properties. Those all have the plan development combining zone as well as a land use designation in the community plan. The community has been asking that the plan development combining zone be removed, but they still want to implement the design guidelines that were worked on for a number of years and adopted, 5 or 6 years ago now. A year or so ago, I worked with the Planning Commission to sort of look at some of the priorities that they would like me to work on when there's some downtime with the general plan activity. And this was high on their priority list. So as we moved forward with the general plan and the consultants were taking the lead on the writing of the EIR, I had some time to work on this. The Planning Commission passed a motion or did a poll to initiate the zoning amendment. As required by our code, a zoning amendment can only be initiated by a landowner who wants to change their zoning, or by the Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors by a majority vote. So by majority vote, they directed me to work with the community to figure out a way to eliminate the plan development, but to continue to apply the design guidelines. In order to do that, what we did was create a more simplified process, which we're calling design review for lack of any other term. Interestingly enough, there was a chapter in our code labeled design review, but there's no actual code for that section. It's 1752 of the county code has the title design review, but there's no actual language behind that code. So it looked like it was something that may have been in place at some time in the past, was removed for whatever reason, so it was a good place to sort of fit it in. Right now, the plan development process requires a planning commission approval of any exterior change to a building, with the exception of sign changes. So anything other than an internal remodel requires review by the Planning Commission, review and approval by the Planning Commission before someone can move forward. This is a lengthy and somewhat costly process. In most of the cases in McCallamy Hill that we've gone through, they've been pretty minor projects, things that just sort of made sense, that people were willing to work with the members of the community that are really very interested in protecting the historic quality that's contained within the design guidelines. There was a committee that was set up to establish the design guidelines, but there is no official design review committee. That committee officially disbanded after the design guidelines were adopted. So working with members of the community, and we've looked at what parcels should this apply to, and what would be a procedure that could work to implement those guidelines and reduce the cost and reduce the time frame. We looked initially at trying to come up with a ministerial type process, just simply a building permit application. Unfortunately, the design guidelines aren't detailed enough to be able to simply apply them. Do they meet the standard or not? Do they meet the standard or not? There is some judgment involved in looking at those design guidelines, and so we felt that it still needed to have some type of process that we look at. And so what we've come up with is the proposed design review ordinance that has been reviewed by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval. It is a planning director level review, and let me step back a moment. This is an ordinance amendment that would apply countywide, but it would only apply to an area where, one, there's been design review guidelines or standards adopted, and a design review combining zone applied. And so right now, that would only apply in McCollum Hill. There is the potential it could apply to other communities in the future if those communities wanted it. The board adopted standards developed by the community for their community, and the board rezoned the property to add that. So it's not something that would just be sort of automatically applied countywide. There would be sort of a lengthy process that ultimately the board would have 2 stages of approval on, one adopting the guidelines and standards, and one actually rezoning the property to have that apply. There are other communities, I know in District 3, Supervisor Oliveira's district, much of the commercial area in Arnold has the plan development combining zone. There is discussion within that community trying to eliminate that. We were working with interested citizens for a while on whether or not they wanted to go to a design review process or not. At this point in time, it's sort of on hold. I don't know that the community was really settled on one way or the other. That's something we'll be looking at in the future. But right now, we're just focusing on McCollum Hill. So again, as I was talking about, the design review guidelines were adopted back in 2012. The purpose of these guidelines were to protect the historic character, and it's a planning tool for design professionals, that they look at it and say, okay, if I'm designing a new building or I want to do an addition to a building, how do I apply that? And this would be handed to someone who comes to the counter and say, hey, I'm going to be designing a remodel or a new commercial structure. Here's what the community wants to see. And so it helps them in focusing their design. And it provides some uniform standards. Again, as I said previously, I still got ahead of myself instead of the PowerPoint, but this has been something that has been on the radar for the Planning Commission for a while. The community has certainly wanted this change to be done. And the next slides are really more suited for the follow-up discussion on the actual rezoning. But so the ordinance itself, and it's starts on page 382 of your packet, provides sort of a fairly simplified process of an application submitted to the planning department. If there is a committee involved, we would route it to them for their recommendation. They do not have approval authority. The approval authority lies with the county. We route it to a committee for advice and recommendation on whether or not they feel it meets the standards that were established for the community. And then the planning director would have the approval authority. It would be considered discretionary under CEQA, but what we found is that, in fact, everyone that we've gone through since I've been here have all been found to be exempt from CEQA because of the nature of the building. There was a small expansion, or it fit under one of the other categorical exemptions. So unless it were a relatively larger project on undisturbed ground, we wouldn't need to go through a CEQA process to do this. So once the internal review would be done, we'd look at it for consistency, work with the applicant to make any modifications to the project if necessary. Then we would approve it and be able to work on issuing the building permit consistent with that design review approval. Of course, any decision that I make would be, or my successors, would be appealable to the Planning Commission and ultimately to the Board of Supervisors if either the applicant or anyone else affected by the project were dissatisfied with my determination. So as far as the ordinance goes, we are recommending, the Planning Commission has recommended that you adopt the ordinance. This would set the stage then for the follow-up action to rezone the property in McCollum Hill to be able to implement this, and again, removing the extra time and costs of going to the Planning Commission for future development within that community. Do you have any questions on this aspect of the proposal?
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Maurer, thank you and your staff for coming. One quick question. Does this set precedence for any future actions like this, i.e. up in Arnold? Do we set a precedence where we can look into the modification or elimination of planned development does not automatically go into a design review?
It does not automatically do that. Again, that's something that the citizens of McCollum Hill wanted. If there is a community that has a planned development combining zone affecting them now, and they said, you know, we just want to get rid of it, that's a separate action. It doesn't mandate that other communities adopt this kind of program. They can if they want to.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Mills?
Yeah, question is, what were the objections raised in making this change?
There were some technical issues we had to continue during the hearings because, you know, just some of the language, and, you know, commission is very thoughtful, one of the most thoughtful and deliberative bodies I've worked with. You know, making sure the language was right. And some of the concerns were about signage. And because in McCollum Hill, there are standards about the type of signs. We can regulate the look of the sign, the size of it, you know, those kind of things. We can't dictate what it says. You know, that's freedom of speech issue. So that was one of the issues. There really hasn't been any opposition to this at all. There were some questions by some of the property owners, and you know, wondering how does this affect me? When I explained it to them, I said, "Oh, okay, I like this. It makes sense." So there hasn't been anyone that has opposed it throughout the process.
I know on page 387, there is a map that shows additional or parcels being added to. They're highlighted in blue.
Yes.
Specifically, there's two that are kind of outliers to the whole thing. Were these property owners aware and approve of being added into this?
They were notified. These two parcels actually, during the general plan land use map hearings before the Planning Commission, petitioned to be added to the historic center designation because they are historic buildings and they wanted to have that recognition. So this is really based on more on their request than anything.
Okay.
There was also one concern, one supervisor or one planning commissioner voted against the proposal. This was Commissioner Munities, represents the Arnold area, and was concerned that this could end up resulting in something more countywide. And I think that I've since spoken with her. She understands that, you know, this is flexible and that it's really up to the community to decide how they want to do it. This is not something that certainly the planning department would not initiate on their own. We want to impose design review onto a community. There is draft policy language in our general plan that supports this kind of action, but based on community input. That the community gets together and says, gee, the citizens of Murphy's want to, you know, protect its historic quality. We want to come up with design standards for our community. But that would be something that would be initiated by community going to a board member putting it on the discussion, you know, having a study session, or at least a poll of the board to decide, is this something that we want our staff to be working with the community to develop, coming back to the board for adoption process. It's not something that just would be sort of happen overnight. And it would have to be something that the community would support. You know, this would, if it were controversial, which is sort of what's happening in Arnold, there are two different camps. There's people that want to maintain some type of design criteria or develop design criteria, and those say, let's just get rid of this. All it's doing is slowing things down, and that's something that we'll be working on. But bottom line, it doesn't set any kind of precedent. This is what has to be done in each community. This is sort of based on the desire of the community to come up with a program to protect whatever kind of design quality that they would like to see for their community. And we would just be sort of assisting that process for them.
And I just want to add a couple of more points. One of the questions that I think came up during the Planning Commission review process was, I think there was a little bit of confusion initially that by adopting 1752, it's a new ordinance, that somehow we're adopting something that all of a sudden applies or restricts communities that have not themselves chosen to enter into a design review process. And I just want to clarify that this is a template for what the procedures would be if a community came to a supervisor and said, we want to do this, if the board decided to adopt guidelines. It's not any sort of mandate that design guidelines will or should be imposed on any community that doesn't want that, or when the board doesn't want them imposed. So that's one thing to clarify. Commissioner Munitrese also, when she voted against it, had stated that she felt that it was basically substituting the plan development for the design review. The community of Moke Hill did not care about that, but they didn't, because again, this is a community that wanted to impose restrictions. What it did is remove one permit from the process. So that was the real reason for it. She felt it didn't go far enough to remove restrictions. However, the community itself did not object to it. So just to make sure, I'm not sure, Supervisor Mills, if you were asking what the objections were from the commissioners or from the public. I don't remember any from the public, but that was part of Commissioner Munitrise's rationale for voting against it.
Usually when you have an opposing vote, you'd like to understand, and I did not review any of the tapes trying to figure out what they were talking about, but I just wanted to hear those objections if they were there.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Mauer, thank you for all the work that your staff has done on this, and you as well. You guys have led the community through a very good process, and we appreciate it. You know, moving from plan development to design review is really important to this community. It is a unified community that came together over the course of decades to come up with design guidelines. So they're universally accepted within town. This is what the community has chosen that it wants to look like. Removing the PD basically allows us to have the same rights as the rest of the county. Insofar as, you know, when we, as Mr. Mauer pointed out, if we want to make an exterior change to a house, a different door type, or even windows, we have to go to project design review, PD, which could mean up to a couple $1,000s additional costs to our citizens. That's not a sense of fairness. We should have the right to pay regular fees like everybody else, and at the same time to determine as a community what we want to look like. There is concern, as you pointed out from Commissioner Munitrese, about, you know, how is this going to impact everybody else? We're going to have every homeowners association or business group coming together and forming up a similar set of restrictions. I equate it to Moke Hill worked 30 years to try to find a way to land one of us on the moon. Well, everybody else is welcome to try to do the same thing, but you're going to have to find a rocket and a way to get there and then a way to land it. It is not an easy project to do. It takes a lot of consensus. So while it does open the door, that door is a real long shot. And frankly, if you had a community that came together and was this unified about something, I'm sure you would, as a supervisor, think this is a good idea as well. So I appreciate all the thought that went into this and the thoughtfulness of the commissioners as well. And I hope that hope this board will allow people in McCalmy Health to have self-determination about what they want to look like and move forward. And I know there was a lot of community members who really wanted to be here today that were unable to make it for innumerable reasons. So if this board decides that this is something they need to learn more about, I know they would like the opportunity to talk. But if this is something this board is willing to move forward with, the town of McCalmy Hill would very much like to move forward as well. Thank you.
Any board comments? I have a couple comments. I think what McCalmy Hill wants and what District 2 wants and what their supervisor is asking for and so forth, I don't have a problem with that at all. If it was confined to Moke Hill, this is an amendment or adding a chapter to Title 17. So that becomes county-wide. It's not just specifically for Moke Hill. It becomes whether it's going to happen today, it's going to happen further, whether there's a new supervisor coming in saying they're going to push this because they want it. It just opens the door for the entire county. It's not specifically for Smoke Hill. And that I have an issue with because we are government, and I don't think it's our right to have this situation where you can go to a Title 17 and request to have this design review. I've been involved with several HOAs, both as a supervisor and as a owner of property, that these things have turned into disasters where you have people that are telling you what color your door can be painted because it's part of the HOA and it's part of the design review of these people sitting in this position that were put in the position to be the reviewers of it, including the roof that you put on your house, what color it can be, what design it can be, what it is. And to throw the government into that, I think you have that option as a homeowner if you want to move into that HOA and have that, knowing when you buy the property that's part of it. And at this point, having this on the books as part of local government, whether it's going to be hard or not hard to be able to do it, I don't think once it's in Title 17 it's going to be that difficult to somebody to get this pushed through, especially if they have the supervisor's ear and going to the planning department and having it brought forward and approving it. There's going to be a lot of controversy. I think you're opening a door here that may never be shut with putting this in Title 17. We have a general plan coming up, and there's no design review zone designation on the map that we just went through for general plan. After we approve that, we will have Title 17 itself coming forward for discussions and changing or going through it and reviewing it. I think that may be at the time, if we're going to go countywide, that we may want to look at it, but I still at that point I don't see supporting it simply because I don't think it's part of the government to go down that route. I think it's more of an HOA or where you live at, whether you want to do it. And certainly there's nothing preventing anybody that lives in the community that has people that want to have a design review committee go forward and put it in place themselves. But I think it's putting restrictions on people that we don't need to put. If you know, we're all different, and I don't see myself having to go before a committee asking them if I can change the color of my door simply because I don't like the color at the time. If I want to go to Lowe's or Home Depot or Ace Hardware or Middleton's or wherever and buy a new door and bring it home and put it up, certainly it's my property, and this is America. I should be able to buy that door and put it up in my house. I own that property. So that's where I'm at in this. Supervisor Mills.
To your point, I think the greatest example of how we can run this train down the wrong track could be Dublin, California, and how far they have gone with colors and parking and what you can do with your property. Please understand that if this becomes a county code, it could easily be applied by 3 supervisors in a moment of indiscretion or whatever, emotional outburst, if you want to call it that, and literally change the direction and suddenly say the community of Vallecito is now design review, simply because we don't like Vallecito or whatever it might be. If McCollum Hill wants something like this, then it needs to be designated for McCollum Hill. But to put it in as a overarching county code, to me, doesn't really make sense, because it just puts too many potential doors to be opened in the rest of the county where I don't see those communities wanting to open them.
Any other board comments? If not, I'll open up for public comment. Public comment?
I looked behind me, but there was nobody there. House of Gallagher Taxpayer Association. I'd like to say that we're blessed with a really good planning director. And it's hard to believe that anything hurtful to property rights could occur by his hand. But he's not going to live forever, and he could be replaced by a monster. And I really agree with comments of our chair, the Board of Supervisors, and Dennis Mills, that the important thing is property rights. In America, the reason why our founding fathers didn't create a democracy was to protect individual rights. If 51% of the people can decide to eat the other 49, it's democratic, it's legal, but it's certainly a violation of human rights. So one way that this could be imposed would be with the permission of each property owner. If each property owner was polled in some way, then we would become almost like a deed restrictions. Okay, that could work, and that would be in accordance with their property rights. But if you have 80% of the people in favor of this and 20% not, those 20% their rights are being violated. No place for that in county government. And again, thank you for your comments.
Any other public comments?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gary Buer. I live in downtown McCollum Hill. And I was just wondering, I'm John Q. Public and how this really affects me. Can I still paint my house purple with green polka dots with white trim?
I don't have the standards in front of me, but I do believe that the standards require a certain type of, doesn't have like a color scheme, but it has sort of a general idea that the colors are supposed to sort of match historic character of the community. So if you were to paint your house purple with yellow polka dots, we would probably have to go to the Planning Commission for you to do that. Under the current rules. The idea would be that the way the ordinance is written, it depends on what's in the standards for the design guidelines. And the design guidelines adopted for McCollum Hill don't, they have paint standards. And so I would hope we wouldn't get to a point where we'd be fighting over paint color.
But, yeah, me and myself also, yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. And the idea is that, McCollum Hill prides itself on its historic character of the community, and those kinds of paint schemes might detract from that. And so that's what the community felt was appropriate, the board adopted back in 2012. If we got to a point where someone painted their house, we don't require a permit for someone to paint their house. And so most people say, well, I'm going to paint my house on something that fits in with the house type and the community, and that's usually not a problem. I would guess it would end up becoming sort of a code compliance issue that would have to be dealt with through that process, ultimately getting approval by the director or the planning commissioner, ultimately the board, on paint colors if the owner disagreed that the color scheme complied with the color scheme outlined in the design review standards.
I guess basically the line I was just trying to ask was, being a Vietnam veteran and, working with the community, being on the fire department, do I still have a right to paint my house the color I want to paint it?
I believe you do.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Garamendi. Yes.
Mr. Chair, as this represents my community, and there was a lot of people who would like to come and address some of these specific items, I would ask that that you consider continuing item 23, 24, and 25 to a date uncertain.
Do we have consensus on that? You would support that, Supervisor Clapp? Supervisor Oliveira?
I would support that.
Supervisor Mills?
We do have, anticipating this might come up, we come up with some additional language that we could focus it to just McCollum Hill right now. 3 fairly simple changes to the text of the code that would limit it to McCollum Hill. If you would prefer to continue it, though, I would prefer that we continue it to a date certain rather than a date uncertain, because the notice requirements of this is pretty big, pretty expensive to notify every property owner.
Okay. And I'll entertain that. I want to hear what you say. If you can put it in a county code that specifically targets McCollum Hill and not the county itself, because again, I don't represent McCollum Hill. I don't have any interest in McCollum Hill. I represent the county and my district. And Supervisor is here, obviously pushing for this. So if we can get it in a county code specifically saying Moke Hill, then I'll entertain hearing it, and the rest of the board. Yeah.
Could we break for lunch, have them rewrite that, come back after lunch and do it?
Why don't we let him, I'm in favor of letting go forward and let him hear what he has to say.
It's fast. If you just pull out your copy of 1752, we can walk you through the changes.
It starts on page 382 if you have it electronically. So the first one would be the title. We just add McCollum Hill to the title. In the purpose statement, 1752-010A, we would add McCollum Hill to the first sentence, establish standards in specific areas of McCollum Hill.
We will delete county and put areas of McCollum Hill.
Okay.
That county has to be...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, right, county. And then in 1752-020, I'm sorry, yes, 020.
Eliminate county and
Same
put,
thing, eliminate county and substitute McCollum Hill. And the rest is just procedural, so I don't believe, eliminate 1752-060.
So basically, we're just eliminating everywhere it says, or things that say county, and just specifically, and that will be okay with the rules as they may exist?
And then the last section we're suggesting we eliminate would be, establishing design review standards elsewhere. So that would go, since we already have the design review standards in McCollum Hill, there would be no need to establish standards elsewhere, since this only applies to McCollum Hill.
So then I have a question about section 3 on 52.060 about speaking of negative deck and CEQA. We're going to keep that in there specifically for Moke Hill.
The board already adopted design standards for Moke Hill, so
Okay.
I don't know if there would be a need to.
So I just want to make sure that we're not going down a road we're cutting Moke Hill off about CEQA.
Well, we still need to do this. The CEQA analysis was specific to McCollum Hill.
Okay.
Because of the map changes.
Okay. All right.
But because they were all combined, this document addressed all 3 actions.
Chair, we have a point of order here, because you had asked for this to be tabled.
Oh, I asked it to be continued, but it wasn't in the form of a motion. It was
Okay.
a suggestion to the
I
chair.
was asking if just
Because
so
there
was no motion.
He had 2 other people agreeing with him.
Yeah. And I had asked for this, and if we can specifically put this in Moke Hill, so it's not a countywide issue, then I would be in favor of it, because that's what the supervisor of Moke Hill and apparently the majority of the people in Moke Hill would like. My concerns, again, were countywide, and enforcing it on other people that have not had an opportunity to even look or hear or know what's going on in the county. And I certainly know from Arnold and the PD and the concerns and the problems that's created. And I don't think some of that was anticipated, but when it was approved. So I don't know about the rest of the board. So I'm instead of tabling this, and going to lunch or whatever, are you in favor if we can make these changes, Supervisor Clapp? or
Yes,
the-
I'm for it.
Supervisor Mills? Yes. Supervisor Oliver? Specifically for Moke Hill?
Once again, I want to make sure that this doesn't restrict other areas of the county, and you brought up a very good point, Mr. Chair. If it applies only to Moke Hill, and the people of Moke Hill have expressed a desire to have this happen, I would agree.
And I would agree too. So that being said, I'm open for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept item 23 with the changes as outlined by Planning Director Maurer, eliminating countywide and specifically to Moke Hill.
Do I have a second?
I would second that.
And I have one question before I call for the vote. Does this have to come back to us then? It will have to.
No, the planning commission operated as the first reading.
Okay, all right, so that was the first reading. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Gary.
Should we just quickly continue the rest of this?
Yeah, I think we can go real quickly through the next ones because they're just a matter of rezoning, and then we can go to lunch.
Okay, so item 24 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing, adopt the negative declaration, and adopt a resolution amending the McCullum Hill Community Plan land use map to eliminate the planned development combining land use designation from all parcels in the community plan area.
So this map shows where the current plan development combining land use designation exists, all the ones shown in yellow. I'll just quickly go through this. This map shows the recommended changes made by the Planning Commission to the zoning. The darker gray would go from PD to DR. There's two light colored parcels down here that have the PD combining zone on them, and we're suggesting they're not necessarily, they're residential lots outside the historic area. One is already built on. There's just really no need to apply that layer of review to those. These other darker black colored or very dark gray ones are the ones that the community members recommended be added, as well as ones that are shown on the draft general plan as within the historic center land use designation. So
all of those properties were sent a letter,
yes,
and
they were.
They did no response.
No one opposed it.
Okay.
So these are the ones that the Planning Commission recommended for. So the Planning Commission recommended that you adopt the negative declaration, adopt a resolution amending the general plan to remove the PD combining land use designation, and adopt the ordinance rezoning the land to remove the PD. There are two separate actions that need to be taken. One is a resolution to amend the general plan. The second is the adoption of the ordinance.
Any board comments? Questions? Any public comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Supervisor Oliveira. Do I have a second? Second by Supervisor Clapp. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 25.
Item 25 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing, adopt the negative declaration, and adopt zoning amendment 2018-044 to remove the planned development combining zone from 100 parcels, replacing it with the design review combining zone, remove the planned development combining zone from 2 residentially zoned parcels, and add the design review combining zone to 17 parcels in the McCullum Hill Community Plan area. Authorized publication of summary. That's it.
You have nothing further to add, so any questions, board comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, bring it back. Look for a motion. Motion by Supervisor Clapp. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Oliveira. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Now, we have two more items on here. If we can carry them out, are we in favor of just finishing off here? And
I gotta get something. I'm getting a headache already.
You're getting what?
A headache.
You have two items here. Do you need a 10-minute break to get something to eat?
I can just leave you guys, you'll still have a quorum.
Mr. Chair, I hate to be the stickler, but I have an emergency that appeared, so we need to finish as soon as we can.
We'll go to lunch and we'll come back at 1.
No, I wanted to continue on.
Oh, you want to continue on?
Yes.
So, okay. Supervisor Mills, you want to continue? Supervisor, I'm fine too.
We can take a 10-minute break for Supervisor Clapp if you like.
We'll be done. Well, you guys have a quorum still.
Oh, okay.
We'll be done in 10 minutes.
All right.
All right. Item number 26.
Item 26 is from the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors to adopt a resolution reestablishing the Calaveras County Public Educational and Governmental Television Commission. So at the last meeting, if you recall, we did introduce and waive reading of the ordinance to rescind and repeal this ordinance, this section of the code. Earlier on the consent agenda, the ordinance was approved. So what this does is this reestablishes the PEG Commission with the new all 7 positions instead of the 5 plus the 2 that were iffy. And we'll be advertising for this as part of our, yeah, that's a technical term, advertising for this as part of our annual report of vacancies.
Okay. All right. Any board questions? Supervisor Oliveira.
No questions, waiting for...
Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. We'll look for a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Supervisor Oliveira.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Mills. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0-1. Moving on to supervisor announcements. Madam Clerk.
In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, board members shall provide brief reports on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency at the next regular meeting of the legislative body. This report is required to include meetings attended for which there has been expense reimbursement, such as mileage, meals, lodging, etc., but may also, at the board member's discretion, include any other meeting attended by the supervisor on behalf of the county.
We'll start with Supervisor Garamendi.
Fortunately, we have no budget, so I have nothing to report.
Supervisor Mills.
I have nothing to report.
Supervisor Oliveira.
I did attend the Malolo Job Training Board of Directors meeting in Sonora on the 9th. And that's all I have to report.
And I have no budget either, so I have no expenses going on, so I have nothing to report at this time. CAO Lutz, nothing. County Council, Meg? Madam Clerk's got a smile on her face.
I do. I didn't get the chance to announce this earlier as I received an email during the meeting. I just wanted to let everyone know that the annual Halloween festivities and Stone Soup contributions for the food bank netted 918 pounds of food and $1,127 in cash donations. So thank you to the employees.
Those are not records, though.
They're not.
They're not records, I know. Okay, so that's it. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Next meeting, December 4th.